this because of your the way that your muscles work or the way that your brain works. So genetic testing can influence people's decisions based if they want to do certain activities.
Since we're talking about genetics, you might want to know about some of the certain genes that we're talking about. So one of the most talked about ones is this ACTN3 gene, which a lot of reporters have called the speed gene because it's been linked to a sprinting ability. Some other genes that have been studied are the APOE genes, specifically a version called APOE4, which has been linked to an increased risk of concussions. And newer research about the COLA1 and COLA2 genes that produce collagens are linking that to ACL tears happening more frequently in an athlete.
So what exactly can a genetic test about sports ability tell us? It can tell you like if your muscles produce a certain protein that makes them work better, and if you are, like what Michael said, if you're more susceptible to concussions or if they have a bigger effect on your brain. So there's a lot of stuff that they can tell you.
So something that comes up with this is direct-to-consumer testing instead of going through a doctor and getting your genome sequenced. And this can help predict some of the injuries that you may have, but as we'll learn later, sometimes this is arbitrary. And a lot of what they're targeting this towards are people or parents that have athletic children or just worried parents in general. And there's some controversy about what this can reveal about a person's health, like if you're a basketball player signing up and you have an increased risk for concussions or another injury, why would they want you when they can get a healthy player?
So talking more about into the ACTN3 gene. So like I said before, it's a gene that produces proteins that helps your fast twitch muscle fibers to contract, so it helps you run faster. And it seems like it would help you a lot, but it's actually, and it seems like it wouldn't be very common, but it's actually in about 80% of the general population. So it's actually really common, and 95% of elite sprinters have this gene. So most of them have it, but a few of them don't. So it doesn't necessarily mean that because you have this gene, it doesn't mean that you will be an elite sprinter or something. And how just because so many people have it, it might be foolish to assume that because you have it, you will become a sprinter, and that you should always just work for that, unless you want to, of course.
So a lot of this talk comes up when we talk about Olympians like Michael Phelps, who's the most decorated Olympian in history. So surely we can look at his genome and see who else could be good at swimming or be someone similar like him. And another person is like Usain Bolt. What makes him such a good sprinter? Why are so many good sprinters in Jamaica? It's a bit stereotypical, but it happens.
So this entire time we've been talking about how genetics can influence people's decisions and how good they are at sports, but that's not always the case, and it's not the only factor. Where you grew up and how much you work and how hard you work at it, how much you want to do it also affects it. So like where you grew up. So people in Canada, they might be a lot better at hockey than people in Hawaii, because people in Hawaii aren't exactly as exposed to that culture as much. So they will not have as much of the skills that they needed.
Okay, so in your little 7 groups, we'd like you to grab those sheets and look at scenario A. And just discuss that with your groups.
To the rest of the group, what conclusion you came to?
Start over here.
Pick someone if they don't stand.
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
Adam, stand up.
Carter, go ahead.
Okay, so we said that it's just a very tough decision, and that, that you would probably talk to your parents to make your decision, because they would be the ones supporting you, and then as well as, ultimately, I think that it might not be the smartest decision to give up a very large scholarship for track, but I also think that if it was really bringing you down, that you might wanna quit it.
Does anybody else have a different opinion?
Well, as a coach and an official, when it says, do you think the generic test you took as a child impacted your path as an athlete? I think there's a couple ways you could look at that. Number one, I used him as an example, if he was tested and it said that he has the ability to be a great baseball player, in the back of his mind, he could probably realize that if I work hard and pull together and I have the right head on my shoulders, I probably can make it. The bad part about it is, if he doesn't care about baseball and the parents are going to push him and say, well, you genetically have been tested, you could be a great baseball player, and he doesn't wanna do it, then he's probably gonna quit. So I think there's both sides to the coin on it. I think that's what we came up with, correct?
I think that's very true in any case. I think ultimately it ends up, no matter if they're tested young or old, I think it ultimately ends up with that person and what it feels, or he or she feels, that they're capable of doing.
regardless of the test.
Yeah, because you could push them as far as you wanted to, and make them learn and learn and learn, and they could learn all day long, and they might not still grasp it.
Okay, we don't have enough time to look at the other scenario, but I'll propose this one to you. Say you're a college basketball player and you're about to get signed on to be an NBA athlete. What would happen if they asked for your genetic information and you know there's other people competing for the same position? Would it be ethical for them to use that against you? Because if you're more inclined to get an ACL tear, it might cost them more to keep you seated or to pay for some of your medical expenses.
I don't think that should have anything to do with what you have already produced in your life. What have you done through high school? What have you done through college? That should not, the test should not be the only reason that an NBA team should.
Yeah, if you're
choose
already-
you or
if
not.
you're already at that point, and you're on the cusp of,
I mean,
being
if you're
an
good
NBA,
enough-
That shouldn't matter at all.
No.
I guarantee you, they would use that against you.
They would use
it
against
I
you.
mean, it's
They
not
would.
ethical, but they would, in a heartbeat, they would. That would differentiate. If you got 2 6'10" kids and one of them's gonna be prone to an ACL injury, they're gonna give the scholarship, or the NBA's gonna pick that kid ahead. There's no difference than if they have social problems. They're gonna take that one. Any little evidence like that is because they're all so close in talent.
Could also
It's just like-
contribute to your contract too, you know, just, I'm thinking even like, you know, we get appraised, we get assessed for our, like, life insurance coverage, and what tier
Yep.
you fall into, and see something very similar in terms of how much they're willing to pay based on the risk.
And it is illegal for your employer to ask for genetic information, so the NBA, and there was an NBA player who they tried to get genetically tested because he had a heart condition, so that's illegal for an employer to do that. But a college could do that to students because they're not employees, they're students, so in theory they could. I don't think there's much, that doesn't seem to be happening, but it could be.
Yeah.
And the Major League Baseball tried to do that as well, to young players.
I think in an ideal world, it would be awesome where, like, the coach and the actual employer wouldn't know that information, but like the athletic trainers and the doctors would know that information so that they could perform or do their athletic training programs and their.
Preventively.
Yeah, so that they could actually be helpful as opposed to, you know, getting that athlete on the court, field, whatever, sooner and not, or prevent that incident. But we don't work in that world.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and if you think about it, if in the future, when they're doing these DNA tests, they have the potential for the person with a heart defect to detect that early and work on it early, fix it early, and then it's not a problem by the time they hit the NBA. So that's the cool part. Yeah.
So we have about 2 more minutes left, so we can be open to any questions you guys have.
How soon is this? Well, I shouldn't say that because actually it is a reality right now because there's a lot of it going on. And I see a lot of health benefits coming from it, health-wise. But as far as making decisions about what one person does or what a person doesn't do, I think that's stepping on some really heavy grounds.
Did you guys in your research see how many tests are done on young children? Is there any evidence of that happening now, that, or is this just like a big probability that could happen?
How often do the tests get done?
We wouldn't know the answer to that question. We could have it signed up and we'll have it by the World Cafe when you guys go by there. The answer?
Wonder how much it is actually a practice.
Yeah, I mean-
As opposed to a,
Do you want me to say anything or should we leave it? Okay, I don't know how much I should say or not. I mean, basically you can, there are tests you can buy online to test your children, or yourself or whoever. They haven't sold very many. There used to be several companies that were selling them, but there's not a huge market, it turns out. And so, but they're just private companies, so we sort of have no way of knowing.
And you saw pictures of 23andMe is a great example. That was actually started by an Augie grad. He doesn't work for him anymore, but the company. So that's a university here in town. You know, you can pay $100, give them a DNA sample, and they'll give you a profile of what you're at risk for. And you know, like you saw the ancestry piece, but they'll give you that health analysis as well.
Any other questions?
What is it that interested you guys in this subject for the
Just-
whole thing?
Harrisburg, it seems to be a lot about athletics. So we thought that maybe if we could talk about how genetics might be connected to it, we might raise some awareness as to what future parents or current parents could do for their child to see what they can or cannot do with sports. It's a good idea to sign them up for football.
Would you have liked to have been tested? Both of you? Question?
I don't play sports, so
Would
it
have
would
been
be
right,
useless
so.
for me.
But you don't know that as a little boy.
No.
As a little boy, you would not have known that.
Yeah, say you were tested and you found out that, oh, you could be a runner. Would that
Or
be-
you'd be
would
a
that
great
have been
wrestler or
Something that you
something.
maybe would have thought about doing instead of the music stuff?
I'm sure if the option was presented to me, I might have considered it more, saying that I could have a chance of being a good sprinter.
So you maybe would have tried it out rather than
Yeah.
just writing it off.
It's like being told you're good at writing, so you might go into calligraphy. It's like I might be good at running, so I can be a sprinter.
There's a great book by an author named Sam Keene. He's actually from Sioux Falls. He's an Old Mormon grad, called The Violinist's Thumb. And the whole book is about genetic awareness of certain traits. And in this case, the title is certain world-class violinists have a specific trait in their thumb muscles and the length of the thumb and so forth that make them better at playing. And it poses a lot of these questions. It's a great book if you haven't read it.
Yep. Wrap it up as a group, wait outside.
Yeah.
We